And now the secret life of Ariel. When the little mermaid lived at the bottom of the sea, it was easy for her to float gracefully through the water. Up on dry land, it was harder for her to move with grace. Without the resistance of the water, her arms moved sharply with jerks that didn't look good. She felt so awkward and wondered what she could do to be more graceful on land. She wondered why she couldn't move through the air with the same smoothness as when she moved through water. One afternoon, snacks were prepared for everyone visiting the castle. Ariel lifted her arm to point to the table. The other girls, who saw the stiff way she pointed, turned toward each other to laugh. But each one had first lifted a gracefully curved arm to laugh behind a perfectly poised hand. Ariel was so embarrassed. Luckily, just then a bell was rung to announce the refreshments were ready to be served. Forgetting Ariel's clumsiness, the girls walked toward the tables full of delicious food. Ariel was helping herself to lemonade when she heard her name called. It was the prince. In her excitement to see him, she whipped out her arm to wave an enthusiastic hello. Tragically, the enthusiasm of her move was so uncontrolled that it knocked over the entire pitcher of lemonade. As the sticky liquid and mounds of ice flowed across the lovely linen tablecloth, the soggy lace dripped onto her satin party slippers. She shut her eyes tightly so she could not see more of the destruction her awkwardness had made to the table, but she could hear gasps as people noticed. Ariel couldn't imagine how she would get through the rest of that party. She tried to be invisible like her crab friends who retreated into their shells. It seemed like an eternity before the guests left. Ariel fled down to the water's edge to ask the advice of her sea friends. All the other girls are so graceful. What is wrong with me? The problem is that you're moving your arms in stiff, sharp angles that look awkward. You've got to imagine you're moving through water, so your arms move in curves, her fish friend answered. Then you'll be graceful too. Don't stick your fingers out. Pretend the air is heavy like water and move your arms in rounded curves with your fingers trailing after you move your arms. And most important, think of what your arms are doing. Be aware of them. When you want to look graceful, you wouldn't pick your nose, would you? He laughed, and Ariel laughed. Of course not. Well, then, be aware if you have other careless gestures, such as letting your arms swing like wet spaghetti, or twisting the end of your hair when you're nervous, or biting your fingernails, or poking your fingers toward people like a witch would do. Stiff, straight, angular moves make you look like a witch. Ariel stared at her hands as her crab friend patted her shoulder as gently as a claw could. And keep your fingers softly together so they won't look like big claws, like mine. But how will I remember? She asked with a sigh. The crab turned to whisper to the fish. Smiling, they turned back to her with their hands held together. We'll give you an imaginary magic wand. It's smaller than your father's trident, but just as beautiful, said the fish. Close your eyes and see if you can see it. When you move your arms, pretend your fingers are your wand, and you'll remember to move your arms softly in curves. Ariel followed their advice. She thought before she moved her arms. That's why she started to look as graceful on land as when she'd been swimming through the water as a mermaid.